Okay, thank you all so much for being here today. This is a really exciting day. We have Nancy and Anna here, all the way from North Carolina. So I'll introduce them, but let me just introduce myself first. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Colleen, and I'm the genealogy and community history librarian here at the library. I work here at the Santori location. We have a community history room upstairs if anyone's interested. Stop by and visit anytime. But without further ado, we're here to talk about Casimir Arcouet. Did I get it?
Got it.
Yes. Okay. So Nancy Chiles is the great-granddaughter of Casimir Arcouet and a native of Asheville, North Carolina. She currently resides in Charleston and is the family historian and did lots of research for this presentation. And then Anna is the great-great-granddaughter of Casimir Arcouet and an Asheville, North Carolina native. And when her aunt Nancy approached her about this project a year ago, Anna was thrilled to jump in and learn more about her roots. And I also just wanted to acknowledge John Jaros at the Historical Society, who brought some wonderful things from their collection from Arcouet, as well as Brian and Tracy, who are with the Aurora Regional Fire Museum, who brought those great, really large charcoal drawings back there. So if you haven't gotten a chance to take a look, please do. And then also just want to thank Nancy and Anna and the Childs family for their recent donation to the library of 2 artworks. One is a self-portrait and one is a bronze relief of the Arcouet family. So thank you so much. And we will take questions. We're going to hold those for the end. But without further ado, let's welcome Nancy and Anna. Thank you so much.
And thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Aunt Nancy as well. She did a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of research, and we appreciate everyone in this room, not in this room, on Zoom, everyone that helped out. I'll let her kick it off, but I just wanted to give a big thanks for being here. This has been a really special project for me to work on, and I'm honored that
That's him.
me about doing this with you. It's been extremely special. I'm happy to be here today.
Why is it doing
Thank
like
you, everybody.
why does it do that?
Let's start with the name.
You have to remote.
Think of a warm goat hair, soft sweater made out of cashmere.
Little TV.
And in the middle of cashmere, stick an I,
Mary
and you
West.
get his first name, Casimir.
Yeah, why is it saying
The
it?
second name, which is his surname, is a little bit more challenging. If we were in France and speaking French, it would be pronounced Arcouet. They don't pronounce the last letter that's a consonant.
Peter?
But we're not in France.
Yeah,
So
but
the
they're in,
Charles family has always referred to this name
Why does
Arcouet.
oh no.
And then there's a third pronunciation. And this pronunciation would be from the viewpoint of a child, 3 years old, and his brother, who was 8. When my father, who was named after his grandfather, could not pronounce Arcouet or Arcouet, and he became Ike. So that is the third way to pronounce this. And Ike lived till he was 85, and that's the name he went by. On the left side of this slide is the self-portrait. Casimir made, we believe, in around 1885. It's a mixed medium. It's been in our family since that time. It's been framed, so I've never seen it out of the frame. I don't know if we have a date. We definitely know that he did it, and it shows that he was handsome. He had gorgeous hair. He was stylish. I understand he was very tall. And
he had a wicked mustache and goatee.
absolutely, very wicked mustache and goatee. So I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for the people that I've listed in the acknowledgements. Let's start with my friend from Charleston, Mary Webb, who is a history teacher, who took me out of a brick wall situation when I was doing the research on my great-grandfather.
You're thanking me.
She used her incredible research skills after speaking to me one night over a glass of wine, and came back a week later with a box of information that she had ordered from the internet. And she looked at me and she said, Nancy, get out of France. You need to be in Aurora, Illinois. There's a guy up there who dresses like your grandfather on Halloween. And so I realized at that point that I needed to start in Aurora and not go or not get sucked into New York City or the country of France. I appreciate Mary so much for redirecting me. Next stop after I focused on Aurora was with Robert Winder, who was the former genealogist and community historian.
Yeah.
He directed me to all sorts of information, including the fabulous, wonderful clipping library that they have at this library. Those clippings filled in a lot of misinformation that I did not have. He also advised me that at the Spring Lake Cemetery, there was not a gravestone on my great-grandfather's grave. He would know that because he used to do ghost tours at the graveyard. So he told me that there was no gravestone and that Arcouet's ghost frequently traveled through the cemetery. That was a little unsettling, but I got over it. Next was the Aurora Historical Society, which provided a incredible document of a deep dive that their former curator, Jennifer Putzier, put together in 2013. I did not get my hands on this document until after I had gone down all of these missed roads. If I'd had it to begin with, it would save me a lot of time, but I put a phone call into Jennifer. She returned it, and she filled in a lot of information about Arcouet's second marriage that I did not have. And she was wonderful. And her article that was published in the newsletter at the Historical Society was wonderful too. John Jaros is the president of the Historical Society. We are working with him to transfer the remaining art collection that we have in Asheville, North Carolina up here, and that includes the 2 statues, the sculptures that you're going to see in this presentation. Thank you, John. Michael Fichtel was also incredibly helpful to me in a phone conversation. As a matter of fact, I think he is the person that got me to Jennifer's research. The next place that we need to go is to the Aurora Daily Beacon, the newspaper. Their clippings were just phenomenal as far as giving me additional background, including all of the clippings that we thought were relevant to this presentation that you're going to see today are clippings from the newspaper, which were clippings that we got from the library. The Kane County Genealogy or Genealogical Society through Don Larson and John Balk provided to me a huge puzzle piece that was missing on a man named William Wagner. And William Wagner brought over from France the Cassell family. And William and the Cassell family immigrated into Aurora, and the Cassell family became the in-laws of Casimir Arcouet. And I did not know how all that transpired until I talked to Don and John, and they sent me a clipping from a book, and I finally got to put it all together. Finally, the last person that's really responsible for any of us being here is a woman named Marie Cassell Arcouet. She's also known as Granny Arcouet. And she was a bit of a pack rat and a scrapbooker from a very early age. And my father kept her collection in a trunk in the basement of our house in Asheville, North Carolina. And in that trunk were the artifacts that you're going to see in this presentation, the photographs, and the scrapbook that she did clippings from and pasted onto the scrapbook. She was incredible. But that scrapbook was not going to help me fill in all the missing pieces. All the people above that I just listed are people that were crucial to this search. And I just want to thank them and thank Aurora for being so good on preserving the history.
And thank you, Colleen, as well, for pulling this all together for us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Colleen, thank you so much for working with us and accepting the gifts and getting us here. I appreciate that.
Hey, don't change
I
it.
started with a map that Mary Webb got me. and I'm a visual person, so this map has been around. You can find it on the internet. We start at 18 Fox Street. Fox Street is no longer Fox Street. It is East Downer. Arcouet spent 14 years at 18 Fox, and at that address, he learned a third medium that he didn't know about, photography. And photography became the bread and butter that Arcouet supported his family by. In addition, at the very beginning of his residency at 18 Fox, he was married to his second wife, a woman by the name of Stella Earle. It was at this address that they lost 4 babies in their infancy at birth. You can see this clipping from the Aurora Daily Beacon telling us that he apprenticed under Melander and Henderson, photographers. They were from Chicago. They migrated from the Great Chicago Fire. And it talks about all of his artwork that was being displayed at the studio. You're going to see a lot of these clippings from the Aurora Daily Beacon, and you're going to wonder, how did he get all this advertising? He was the photographer for the newspaper, and I think that's how he did it. In the middle of the 1800s, 1885, he moved to 91 Fox Street, and this is where we think he did his best work, because at that address, he married Marie Cassell. Marie gave him a lot of stability, gave him their daughter, who was born Leah Arcouet. Over the years, her name became Americanized to Leah. And his last 2 decades at 91 Fox Street, we believe, were the most productive of his career. Casimir may make you think of a warm, fuzzy sweater, but it is anything but. It has a Slavic origin, and it means destroyer of peace. He was the firstborn son to parents who were first-generation Canadians or French immigrants who settled in French Canada. He was French in origin, but he was not French in birth. He was La Nouvelle French in birth. His ancestry is from Lyon. However, that's not going to be relevant to this discussion. He survived 2 great fires, one when he was 3, one when he was 37. And he became a great secret keeper and a man of big dreams, because he was not happy to be what his heritage provided for him, which would be a trapper or furrer,
What happened if he
maker, shoemaker. Or what we found in a directory in Old Montreal was he started out as a stone cutter and a stone polisher. He didn't want that. He wanted another life. So let's start at the end. It might be a crazy place to start, but there's a reason that we're starting there. And the reason is, in this beautiful obituary that we believe was written by the editor of the Daily Beacon, who was a very good friend of his, did not know him as well as he thought he did. Because in this obituary, which is from a clipping from this library, it states that Casimir was born in France. He was not born in France. It states that he was born in 1842. He was born in 1834. It states that he came to America with his parents in 1872. His parents did not bring him to this country. He walked over the border from Canada all by himself. Why did he figure that he needed to create these fictions to be the great artist that he was? We don't really know why he did it, but we think we can give you some light into why he decided to be this little bit of a fictional character. We do know this, that the editor did a wonderful job of summarizing in his obituary this particular sentence. By his death, Aurora loses one with limited means and large industry, which is molded into imperishable form from the likeness of many of our citizens, and whose work will live for years to come. This is not the full obituary. We excerpted it. And on the left is the photograph that we believe the self-portrait came from. We superimposed this photograph. If you're looking for this in newspapers.com, you're not going to find it, because we just thought it would be more interesting to have it next to the.
It makes a nice PowerPoint slide, yes.
And then let me talk a little bit about the photograph. Look at how he dropped Casimir. He was known as Arcouet in his town. He was never known as Casimir. So it was C. Arcouet. On this particular photograph, it says it was 91 Fox Street. So we could possibly date it to the mid 1880s because that's where 1885 we think is the date that he moved into 91 Fox. And look at that profile. I mean, tall, dark, handsome Frenchman. He does look the part with a
With a
crazy
wicked mustache.
with a wicked mustache. If you're a genealogist, your go-tos are the obituaries and the censuses. So if the obituary is wrong and the censuses are wrong, you are going down a blind alley trying to figure out where your ancestors coming from. I picked out the two censuses that we were able to find, the 1880 census and the 1900 census. Both of these were consistent. Casimir Arcouet was from France, and he was born around 1842. So he shaved 8 years off of his life all the time.
Sometimes 10.
Sometimes 10. He shaved 10 years off. And we'll figure out why in a minute. Anna?
So to start to understand this man who reshaped his identity, reshaped his future, built his future, so to speak, we really have to start at the beginning to understand what he went through. So in 1834, Louis Casimir Arcouet was born and baptized in the Basilica Notre Dame in Montreal. He was the son of Henriette Maureen and the son of his father, Casimir Arcouet Sr. And both of these individuals were so interesting and so courageous. They actually participated in the French revolt against the British, and they are signatories of the Declaration against British-French rule. These courageous actions almost cost them their lives. And in 1850, Casimir's mother, Henriette, tragically died when he was about 16 years old. And she and Casimir Sr. had 9 children together. So when she passed away, these 9 children were Casimir Arcouet Sr.'s responsibility. And tragedy struck again 2 years later in 1852, the Great Fire of Montreal totally destroyed the shoe boot factory that Casimir Arcouet Sr. built his business in. It was the family business, and it left the family in financial despair. So unfortunately, you all are going to learn a theme amongst Casimir's life, and it's that tragedy kind of wove its way through the decades of his life. And this is not isolated to his childhood. Unfortunately, this carries on for decades. And it's no different in his first marriage. So his first marriage was to a young Selena Bertrand. Casimir was 21 at the time, and they married in the same church that he was baptized, the Basilica Notre Dame of Montreal. Between 55 and 63, they had 4 children, and the only surviving child that they had was their firstborn son. The other 3 died in infancy, and unfortunately, it was just very tragic circumstances for the pair. And in 1863, a young Selena Bertrand tragically passed away as well. And she was buried in the Basilica Notre Dame of Montreal, the same church that witnessed both her husband's baptism and their marriage as well.
And where their children were, the children that did not survive.
Yes. So as I mentioned before, we see tragedy in childhood. We see tragedy strike his first marriage. So at this point in time, Arcouet really wanted a fresh beginning. So he set his sights on the American dream.
So this American dream that we can document, because I tried to document him coming into the country and going through immigration, which he did not. There are no immigration files on Casimir Arcouet. Started definitely in 1865, where he attended school at a wonderful place called the free night school at the Cooper Union. The Cooper Union is a renowned school for all sorts of
Share that one.
curriculums in training immigrants by Peter Cooper, who was a New York philanthropist and saw the need in New York for education for the immigrants that were flooding into the city. Arcouet started out in a mechanical drawing course, which he ended up dropping. The next year, he picked up 2 certificates in drawing from life and drawing from cast. He got these certificates by going a full year to this night school at night. So during the day, he had to work a job in New York. A lot of times the students at Cooper Union would be able to apprentice for artists. So we think that maybe he picked up a lot of skills.
Can you get them for him?
then. The next lead that we get from documents is a city directory in 1871 showing that Arcouet lived on a street, 23 Charles Place in Chicago, Illinois, and his profession was a modeler for the Chicago Terracotta Tile Company. I understand from many sources that that was a wonderful place to work because there was so much work that you could create for the architectural community in Chicago. There's a online publication of their catalog, which if you can go and pull it up and look at it, there are all sorts of decorative architectural effects, corbels, arches. In addition, he would be sculpting and modeling animals such as lions and dragons. They're in the catalog also. We know from a clipping from this library that after he made the move to Aurora, he was charged with taking the remaining inventory from Chicago Terracotta and bringing it to Aurora and trying to sell it in his studio.
All right, let me get some batteries. Hold on.
So another thing that I'll mention on this slide as well is he was living in Chicago during the time of the Great Chicago Fire. And when this event broke out, it took everything from him. He lost his studio space, as you all, many of you grown up near Chicago, you know how devastating this fire was. So the Great Chicago Fire took everything that Arcouet had worked to build in the United States. And so when this happened, again, as you all are learning, Arcouet was many things, but the character traits that stand out to me about him were resilience. He was a survivor, and he was going to learn how to rise from the ashes. He was going to make that happen for his life. So after the Great Chicago Fire, he set his sights on Aurora, and this is where he decided to ultimately put down his roots in this country. So on Valentine's Day, 1872, Arcouet married his second wife, Stella Earle. And it's here in this decade or so in Aurora that we see Arcouet's entrepreneurial spirit kind of take life. As Nancy alluded to, we believe that he saw a little bit of a marketing opportunity by becoming friends with the editor of the Aurora Daily Beacon. This article pictured here is one of the first, not the first, but one of the first articles that mentions Casimir. But we have an amazing paper trail through this publication about the works, and it helped Nancy timestamp some of these works that Arcouet did. So we see this friendship kind of develop and blossom. This article featured here on November 30th, 1872, mentions a new artist in town, mentions that he's exciting and he's doing great work. It mentions his relationship with the photographers Melander and Henderson. It also mentions a couple of sculptures that he had done, one of Shakespeare that had been purchased by an important member of the Aurora Society. So as his career is starting to build, and I will mention it was in Aurora that he started refining his photography skills as well. His first love was sculpting. His first medium of art that we believe he adopted, one of the first, is sculpting. But we really see his photography take off in Aurora around this time frame. So as the publications are beginning to roll and folks are starting to gain interest in Arcouet's work, he's starting to gain popularity in the community, we start to see his personal life kind of take a downturn. And between 72 and 80, 1872 and 1880, Stella and Arcouet gave birth to 4 children, and they lost all 4 of those children in infancy and early childhood. So as his career is taken off, his personal life is fraught with sorrow. And it was during this era that we see this sculpture come into existence. This is perhaps one of Arcouet's most evocative and somber pieces of art. This artwork is named Satan in Society, and I believe that this sculpture was inspired by the dark times that Arcouet had lived through. As I reflect back on my great-great-grandfather's life up to this 46 years around then when he made this sculpture, I think about everything that he lived through. The loss of 7 children, the loss of a young first wife, the disintegration of another marriage, having to leave his firstborn son behind, perhaps in Canada. And I believe that this sculpture is a representation of all the pain that Arcouet had lived to up to this point. And I also believe that is a bit of a representation of the expectation that he must have felt as an up-and-coming artist, having to provide for a family in a world that gave him little to no peace.
Hold on the sculpture.
Yes.
I'd like to add my 2 cents on the devil or the Satan in Society, because this sculpture is guaranteed to scare generations of children to death. I can remember as being a small child covering the statue, which stood in our foyer, with a blanket before I could walk by it. I was so scared. And I do remember that in the second generation of children in our family, that my father actually moved it to the basement.
It was in the basement, and the basement was creepy itself, you know. So with or without Satan in Society, the basement was doing its job by being a creepy basement.
But this statuary made of plaster of Paris is guaranteed to scare, and it's currently housed in the Pack Memorial Library in Asheville, North Carolina. They pull it out for Halloween, so it's got some good use. All right.
But I will mention that in 1881, luckily we kind of see Arcouet's life turn around a little bit. So Nancy, can you tell us more about that?
It does turn around. And if you see at the top of the slide, there's a fellow by the name of William Wagner. What we know about Wagner is that he came to this country with a French family, the Chiles. He knew fluent languages, and we believe he was the tutor of the 2 daughters of Kate and Matthias Chiles. Their daughters were named Mathilda and Marie. There was an 8-year age difference between them. When they came into Chicago, believe it or not, the Chicago fire was raging. They were slated to settle in Chicago, but they couldn't. They migrated to Aurora. They settled in Aurora. William Wagner was very enterprising. I believe he met Matthias in Paris. Matthias was a tailor, a very well-suited tailor who worked for a design house. And I believe that William was hired to tutor the daughters. So that is how they all met and came into Aurora in 1871. 10 years later, on July 31st, 1881, Wagner walks into the studio of Casimir Arcouet, and he commissions him to create a crayon portrait of his firstborn son, because William ends up marrying Mathilda Chiles once she becomes of marital age. So around 18, they marry, they have 2 sons. The firstborn son is captured in a crayon drawing, and you see in this next slide On the left-hand side is a photograph lifted from a publication in Aurora called the Aurora Story, and that's of William Wagner's grocery store. He was very successful, very enterprising, and I believe he can be pictured. He is in this picture, we just don't know which one he is. We do know that the man standing on the right-hand side of the store is Matthias Cassell. We can confirm that photograph. I do not know if William is behind the horse on the delivery or if he's standing next to his father-in-law, Matthias. He would be on the left side of this photograph. This wonderful clipping gave me insight as to, that's how Arcouet met the younger daughter, Marie. If you read this article, William Wagner commissioned him to do this beautiful crayon painting. And after Arcouet created the crayon drawing, excuse me, I meant to say drawing, not painting. He was so enterprising and a wonderful marketer. He took the picture and he exhibited it in the storefront of another store in Aurora. And that's what is written about in this article.
Well, thanks for coming.
As I mentioned before, it was in this era of Arcouet's life that we see things turn around a little bit and things get a little less heavy and tragic for him. So these years of his life, we lovingly named in this timeline 2 new muses, and we're going to tell you why. In 1884, Casimir Arcouet marries a 21-year-old Marie Cassell. There's some very interesting topics that we want to bring up, focusing on some of these documents that we had access to. So the first is the marriage license. And we noticed that, once again, Casimir did not tell his age. He made himself to be 10 years younger than he actually was. He was about 50 at the time of this marriage. He was 50 at the time of his marriage. He claimed himself to be 40, and then he also claimed to be from France as well. So, as Aunt Nancy mentioned before, his motives for flubbing the truth a little bit, we really don't know. We can just speculate, but we wish we had the answers to that question. But another interesting thing that we noticed from these documents is none of the Cassell family were witnesses to their marriage. So we believe that this was an elopement. Because of the age gap that they might have not known was so severe, maybe they thought it was 10 years less, we think that Matthias Cassell and Marie's mother might not have given their stamp of approval on this matrimony. So we potentially think that maybe his motive for fudging the truth a little bit could be because he was trying to earn the respect of his father-in-law, where their relationship might have been a bit strained. But during this era, one thing is definitely evident. Pictured here is my great-great-grandmother, Marie. And this was a photo that was taken by Arcouet. And we're going to dive into a few more photos like this, but to be able to take that photo and impose it as he did in this is what we call Photoshop today. So it is pretty incredible that he was able to do this in the 1800s. And it really shows the caliber of his artistic vision and the way that it was evolving, not only in sculpting, but in his photography as well. Here are a few more examples. And during this era, we think around 1885, is it exactly in 1885 he moves to 91 Fox Street?
We believe so.
Yes. So he moved his studio location to 91 Fox Street in 1885. And you see his photography, as I mentioned before, blossom. And who is the centerpiece? Who is the muse to his artistic vision? It's Marie. Marie is photographed in all of these. And the correlation that I wanted to draw here is this middle photo right here. You can tell, take a look at the dress, take a look at the dog, take a look at the hat, and then take a look at this sculpture. We believe this is a young Marie. So we believe that Casimir drew so much inspiration by the love that they shared that he turned her also into sculptures. And this is the two of them featured in their 91 Fox Street location. This is one of the rare photos that we have of Arcouet actually in the photo. Many of the photos are of Marie or of someone that we will get to very soon. But during this time frame, early on in their marriage, Marie actually became a business partner in his studio. And to me, this just shows the dedication that she had for her husband and the support that she gave him, supporting his artistic career and his artistic vision. So this is them in their 91 Fox Street studio. And another thing I wanted to point out here is this piece of artwork. So Arcouet was not happy with just leaving his cabinet cards blank. He wanted to go into great detail and put his mark in a way that he felt showcased his art the best. So this was a case card design that he made, and you can just see the intricate detail and the hard work that he put into every single piece of his artwork. And in 1885, March 24th, we see Arcouet's miracle child born. I can only imagine the immense joy that he felt the first time that he was able to hold his beautiful, happy, healthy little girl. After experiencing so much tragedy and so much loss in his life. So to me, this is a very special moment and a turning point in his life. Marie and Arcouet named their child Leah Arcouet, which, as Nancy mentioned, would be soon Americanized to Leah Arcouet. The spelling would change, the pronunciation would change. But this little girl was the center of her father's life. So much so that he drew a lot of inspiration from Leah in this decade. The picture we have here is a cherub series that Casimir photographed and documented. We were able to find this series of photos in Marie's scrapbook, and boy, am I so grateful that she preserved these memories for us. They are so special to our family. In the middle, you see Leah's toddler years captured in plaster. This is a family heirloom that has been a centerpiece to the Chiles household for generations. I remember it being displayed in my grandmother's living room. And although I didn't know who it was at the time until my father told me, that's your great-grandmother, I can't begin to express in words just how important this piece of art has been to the Chiles family.
We used to dress her. We would take, especially in the winter in Asheville, North Carolina, it gets cold, but not as cold as it does up in Chicago or Aurora. We would dress her in wool hats. Then we put booties on her feet and a shawl around her shoulders. So she came in to good use. And she is still now in Asheville at the Pack Memorial Library.
And one photograph that I find particularly interesting and a great metaphor is this one right here, where Arcouet has Leah staged as Galatea, who is the goddess of calm seas. And I think this is an amazing metaphor for the peace that this duo, that Leah and Marie, brought to Casimir, the destroyer of peace, or the destroyer of peace. This collection of photographs is Leah with her grandparents. And although the relationship between Casimir and Matthias may have been strained to begin with, this all fades away the second Leah enters the scene. And another thing I want to point out is just how eloquently dressed this little girl is in every single one of her photos. I wish I had her wardrobe. Here in the middle, you see a beautiful French beret that we believe was brought back to her from her father in a trip that we'll revisit in a few slides. But the interesting thing about her costumes and the way that she was dressed is that Matthias actually made all of her clothes for her, because after all, he was a French tailor for the House of Worth. Again, Leah was the center of her father's world, so much so that he wanted to preserve her beauty and her innocence just the way she was. So I want to point out the bronze shoe in the middle. This, again, has been another extremely special heirloom that has been displayed in the Chiles households for generations. This is the same shoe that Leah is wearing in the photograph on the far right. And the photograph on the far right should be an album cover. I mean, it is just an incredible photo, and it is one of my favorites in the collection. She's balancing on a glass bottle. Now, I will mention she was actually not balancing on a glass bottle, but this is a testament to the great artistic ability that Casimir Arcouet had in his photography skills, but also how it blossomed when Marie and Leah entered the picture. And then the photo on the left here is another photo from the Cherub series that Casimir captured with Leah. So in 1889, Casimir's dream finally takes flight. And he and a few other of his friends, people that were in company with him, actually decide to take a trip to Paris around the French Exposition. So in his company was brother-in-law William Wagner, and also the editor of the Aurora Daily Beacon, who did a fantastic write-up of this trip. This article on the right captures all of the whimsy of the trip. It has some fantastic stories: balloon rides over the Eiffel Tower, seasick travelers coming over from the United States. It even mentions an at-sea funeral at midnight that Casimir was woken up from slumber to attend. So there's a lot of really interesting stories in this article. And we know that Marie knew that this was a special trip to her husband. It was a homecoming for his soul. And thankfully, she preserved these memories beautiful in this collection. They were preserved in her scrapbook. These are also some sketches that are held by the Chiles family. And these are raw sketches that were done by Casimir Arcouet. And they capture the experiences that he had from this trip. We even have the death, the funeral, the at-sea funeral right here. He's capturing his seasick partner. But the sketch that I love is this balcony view right here. This was their balcony view, the room that they stayed in while attending the French Exposition. And this landscape must have been breathtaking, because we even see the Eiffel Tower rising from the background. And what incredible inspiration for Arcouet to bring back to the United States.
So now we're moving into the final decade of Arcouet's life, from 1890 to 1899. He comes back into the country, and he is so excited by the Paris Exposition of 1889 that he is bound and determined to get a sculpture ready for the opening of the World Columbian Exposition here in Chicago. He is feverishly working on his masterpiece, and he finishes it. Not only in time, but before time for the World Columbian Exposition, because as you all know, it was didn't open on time. So Arcouet was ready. He was so ready, and he was so determined that he gave his own gallery exposition at his studio of the sculpture that he had created and other artifacts that he was going to put into the World's Fair exposition. These are documented on the left-hand side and also critiqued, I'm sure, by his good friend, the editor of the newspaper. On the right-hand side, I think Mary Webb ordered this World Columbian Exposition, so I could see a picture of the building that his sculpture was presented in, which would be the Illinois building. He named his sculpture Love's Recreation, or was it Love's Recreation? Hannah's going to deal with that issue. The Chicago Tribune documented that the fair actually opened on, I believe it was May 1st, 1893. And in their article about the fair, the Chicago World's Fair, they list all the exhibitors from Illinois. And in that massive amount of people, you can find Arcout's name, his work, and where it is. It was located. It was located on a floor that was not suitable for Arcout. So he was, I think, instrumental in having it moved. He wanted it moved to a lower floor where there was no possibility of it getting knocked over. And you will see why in just a minute.
So I know we've been building up to this moment, Love's Recreation or Love's Recreation. What does it actually look like? This is what it looks like. So for my sake of artistic interpretation, I'm going to call it Love's Recreation. And this was the sculpture piece that he created for the World Columbian Exposition. And it just exemplifies the remarkable detail that Arcouet gave to each one of his pieces. This one in particular, this was his masterwork. Every curve and contour details the complexity and the time that he must have invested into this piece of work. So do we know where this sculpture is today, Aunt Nancy?
We do not, but we sure would like to know.
We have a hunch though.
I have a
Sure,
question.
yes.
Do you know how big it was? Do you have any idea of that?
We do not have dimensions. We can only guess.
It was too big for the governor's room, and that's why it had to be moved. So we think that this was a fairly large piece of art. Yeah. Because the foot traffic that it was garnering at the time it was too much that the room could hold, and that among Arcout's requests is why it needed to be moved.
And what's going on at the top?
Those are dragons. And, you know, from his time with Chicago Terracotta, he got some experience in dragon sculpting, lion sculpting. So we think that this is kind of a skill that he picked up at his time there with the Chicago Terracotta Company. But you have some cherubs kind of climbing to the top. But I would love to, after this presentation, hear your interpretation of this artwork as well, because it is so, there's a lot going on here and it's so interesting. And you have crying children at the bottom, and you have cherubs crawling to the top, and you have dragons at the top. There's no telling what this actually meant to him, but there's definitely a story here, and it's an interesting story.
How many photos of that? Just a couple or what?
We only have one.
I only have
Yeah.
one. And the original photo that was in Marie's scrapbook was so mangled and so torn, I had to take this to a photography studio to get it reproduced.
So he was actually selling replicas of the photo at this time as well.
Always the enterprising business owner.
Always looking to make a buck.
Did you ever try to reach out to the Schlitz family?
Let's talk about that.
Okay, so we do have a letter from Joseph Schlitz inquiring about Love's Recreation. He was inquiring about both the plaster, and he inquired actually about a bronze casting of the plaster as well. And in this letter right here on the left, this is a quote that mentions Tiffany & Co. for a bronze casting of Love's Recreation for $2,500. So unfortunately, we do not know if this transaction ever took place, but it is possible that the heirs to the Schlitz Brewing Company, to my knowledge, Joseph Schlitz did not have any children. So the brewery actually went to the nieces and nephews of his wife, and that family is now the Yulheim family, multi-billion-dollar business moguls. I did try to do some creeping on them, and they don't seem super approachable, but if anyone has a tie to that family that can get us an in, we would love to be able to talk to them and see if this sculpture still exists. But the trail kind of goes cold after these two documents.
So it's probably in a private house somewhere,
No, it could be, yeah, it could. I mean, this is.
or in storage.
Yeah, orange storage. It's a very wealthy family that inherited the Schlitz Brewing and probably all of Joseph's belongings. Because they didn't have any children, so it went to their nephews and their nieces.
However, it's my personal opinion that this was such a delicate sculpture. It would be very hard to preserve in plaster. I mean, if it was not bronze, it would be very difficult that it survived a century. But you never know.
Yeah, I mean, Satan and Society and Leah's toddler years are doing pretty good, but you definitely have to store them right because they chip, it's plaster. So we hope that it still exists and we hope that we can track it down at some time. So another sculpture that is mentioned during this era by the Aurora Daily Beacon, April 24th, 1884, is this sculpture of Napoleon announcing his divorce to his wife, Josephine. And this garnered a lot of attraction from the local community. Again, a testament to how popular he was in Aurora.
And a testament as to how much he loved France.
Yes.
And Napoleon and Josephine. So in the 1890s, the way Arcouet lived and made a living was on commissions, which he received several of. Commission from the state senator H.H. Evans for a bronze sculpture, which is now in the collection of the Aurora Historical Society. In addition, he did many bas-reliefs. One of the bas-reliefs that he did was of his family. That relief is on the right-hand side, and it is today now in the collection of the Aurora Library. We believe this was done in the early 1892. You see Leah as a young girl on the right, her mother Marie in the middle, and on the left is Casimir Arcouet, who looks incredibly young. So that has been in our family for all these years. We've cherished it, we've loved it. And
hung in the dining room.
Hung in the dining room, and we are so happy that it's now back home in Aurora where it started. He also received contracts with the Ecclesiastical Society here to do bas-reliefs of many cardinals and bishops. We have no idea where those landed. There is an example of a bas-relief that John Jaros from the Aurora Historical Society brought today to share with us of a citizen. I think the name is Trask.
Yes.
So that is how he lived during this last decade, all by commission. So he was doing well. He was not having to do a whole lot of photography. He was going back to what his first love was, which was sculpture.
How much is that? 300 for that?
I'm sorry?
How much is the amount? That
Oh.
cost?
For the bronze.
That was $300 for the
At that
foundry, foundry at that time.
Yeah, how much is that equivalent to today? Oh,
I don't know.
I don't know, but that's a great point because you think about the $2,500 quote that Love's Recreation got for a bronze casting, and you can imagine probably the size compared
25.
to this one.
That's a lot.
Yes. So that's why we don't know if it ever happened, because that was a good chunk of change back then.
So now we're coming to the end, which was where we began. Aurora loses a local talent. This is my absolute favorite photograph of my grandmother, Leah Arcouet. And Believe it or not, this photograph is from a place in Chicago. During the time that her father was sick and dying, she took on the role of savior of the family. She created and moved his art to Chicago, to a studio in the Chicago Auditorium Tower. She was 16 or 17 years old when she did this. In this photograph, you see Leah acknowledging to her left the statue of baby Leah. To the far left appears the plaster of Senator H.H. Evans, not the bronze sculpture, but the actual plaster, which would be, his first try at recreating it. And he painted, it looks as if he's painted the clothing and the top hat for Senator Evans. There are a lot of other pieces of work in this picture that can provide provenance for people that maybe still live in Aurora and have his artwork.
And that was before the auditorium theater became part of, way before it became part of Roosevelt University or.
We date this photograph to 1900. Arcouet died in 1902. Arcouet had a long-suffering death. He was diagnosed with tuberculosis. He was contagious. So Marie kept him at home where they lived in Aurora. She separated him from Leah. Leah took the train over to Chicago and stayed with friends of the family, which I'm sure there were many in Chicago that supported her on trying to get this artwork sold to support the family. Because on August 18th, 1902, Casimir died a true starving artist. And the reason I know that is because they did not have the money to bury him. He was buried by a fabulous philanthropic society called the Order of Oddfellows, the Independent Order of Oddfellows, the IOOF, and the chapter was the Wabansie chapter. He was a member of that order, and the reason I know he was a member of that order is because there was another clipping from the newspaper file that said that he took the order over to the entire order of men over to the World's Fair and did a photograph of which he made a portrait of this organization. So they loved him, and the organization's mission statement was very benevolent: visit the sick, relieve the distressed, bury the dead, and educate the orphans. So today, Arcouet has a grave marker in the Spring Lake Cemetery, where he was buried over 120 years ago. His birth date is carved in this stone. It's in granite now, so he can't hide his age.
He is rolling in his grave because his actual birth date is posted down on his gravestone.
Yep. Ann and I had a discussion. The gig is up.
The gig is up.
The gig is up. Marie and Leah are resting in Asheville, North Carolina, in a cemetery family plot, the Riverside Cemetery. Leah and her father died at the same age. They were 68 years of age. Marie lived until she was 77. If I could thank my great-grandparents for anything, it would be for this gene that they have transferred to our family. And that gene is the creative and artistic talent which lives on in the Chiles family. Leah's art is located, like I said, in a collection that's housed at the Pack Library in Asheville. She was an artist in her own right. She had a studio in Asheville, North Carolina. Her specialty was China painting. And China painting was very popular in the 1930s, 1920s, 19-teens, where women would come in and they would paint the china, they would fire the china, and it made beautiful china for not only eating or displaying in cabinets. Her son, my father, Ike, was another talent. He did not make a livelihood off his talent, but he was incremental in the Asheville Community Theater, where he drew the sets, painted the sets, made the sets before he married my mother. He also helped us with all sorts of projects as kids. He was very, very talented. I have my siblings who also have that creative, artistic ability. I have a sister, an older sister, who used to be a painter. She's now a wedding planner, and every wedding she does is a work of art. I have brothers who, believe it or not, are stone cutters. And they've built stone walls in Western North Carolina, not as a profession, as a hobby. We used to live on a farm and there was a lot of granite and rock. And my father said, let's build some stone walls, son. And they did. And those walls still stand and they are just beautiful. The next generation, Anna, does crayon drawings with artist pencils and chalk. And she's had absolutely no instruction, no coursework. She's done it on her own. Her cousins, one of them is a graphic artist on the West Coast. Another one lives in Western North Carolina. He's a wood carver and a wood turner. And I channel, and my other sister, who is very skilled in genealogy and lives in South Carolina, I channel Marie. I'm a pack rat. And I won't let any piece of this history go until every one of my nieces and nephews know about it, acknowledge it, and hear about how incredibly interesting their lineage was and our family history was. So I thank Granny Arcouet every day for her ability to collect and for Leah to store. Imagine having to crate and travel with this artwork. I mean, Leah left Aurora and moved south. And then she was in Alabama teaching art. And then she moved up to Western North Carolina. All of this artwork was in her collection. So she traveled with it all of her life. And then it was left to my father. And it's been in our house since then. So I'm incredibly grateful to my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and my grandmother for keeping these keepsakes in this story. And I'm incredibly grateful to Aurora for preserving the story. And thank you very much for having us today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. We are happy to take any questions that you all might have.
Did they live and work at 19 Fox Street, or were they
That is such a good question.
You actually asked that question before.
John Jaros and I were having that discussion before this presentation. I feel that they lived above the shop. It's a 3-story building. We're gonna go by and see it after this is over, because I've never been down Fox Street or East Downer, but I believe that they lived above in an apartment, but I am not sure.
You also know that the addresses have changed?
I do. I know that 91 Fox Street, I think, is now 69 East Downer. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, so there's a couple of things. I think you're probably right about them living. We would just have to look at city directories and. But the actual addresses have changed a number of times.
Oh, I see.
So I suspect that 18 Fox is 91 Fox. That he didn't actually move.
Interesting.
Because the addresses changed the first time about 1886, we think. Because there are city directories, and there's a gap in the city directories that are available. And the only way there's no guide list or key. And so the only way to know is, well, we know this house was inhabited by this family this whole period. And in 1884, it's listed at this address. In 1886, it's listed at this address. But it's the same house. We know that. So I can't prove it, but if I did a little research, I might be able to give you a 95% probability, but I think they're the same place. I think it's not likely that he moved. but rather that the address change. And then the address is changed again in 1929, and that's where you have the current address.
That's when it changed to East Downer,
Well,
or?
it
Because I'm totally
was-
confused.
okay,
We all
no,
lost
the
history.
the address number changed in 1929. The street name changed in 1965, I
I see.
think. Because Aurora had different street names on the east and west sides for the same streets. And so it was Fox Street on the east side and it was Downer on the west side.
Yeah.
And then in 65, they just said that's too confusing for everybody that's coming into town, and we'll just make it one.
Well, thank you so much for that insight.
Yeah.
I saw the markers, some of those markers. Is there any markers over there within a couple blocks? You know, like. I saw there on Iowa, that, and the marker is not for Iowa, it's.
Oh, like,
Previous address.
like the little things that are in.
Down in the.
Yeah, that would be the old number up to 1929 is generally, you see some of those in sidewalks or something.
Yeah,
Anyway, so I'll do a little research and see if I can't get that a little bit more certain.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that. If anyone has questions on Zoom too, feel free to put it in the chat. We don't have audio, so just put it in the chat if you have questions. Yes.
Is this the World Fair that you're talking about? Is that the same as the Devil in the White City?
Yeah,
Correct.
Columbian Exposition, yes.
Mhm.
Correct.
Yeah, it was, so that fair was to mark the anniversary of 1492 Columbus, but it opened late, so they didn't open it till May of 93.
Mhm.
And you know the name of the editor of Beacon News?
I'm sorry.
Editor of the Beacon News.
I believe his name is Del Riddle.
We didn't put it in there because we didn't have confirmation, but we suspect that his name is Del Riddle. Yeah.
And the clipping from the newspaper regarding the Paris exposition came from the scrapbook of my great-grandmother, from Marie. I tried to get the microfiche of that clipping and it has been destroyed. I went through Robert Winder here at the library. He tried to look it up. He sent me to the State Historical Society. They
Yeah.
tried to look it up and they said, we don't understand what happened to these microfiche, because they every week they were doing a article about the trip to Paris. They call themselves the Continental Tramps, which I thought was pretty funny. And they had a lot of fun over in Paris.
Well, I bet it was a great time in that era. And if Rob Winder couldn't find it for you, it couldn't be found, because that was his thing with the microfilm. It was just pretty amazing.
Yeah, he was terrific.
so I noticed his association with Oddfellows. And right now, that Oddfellows building, John, do you know when that was built? Because that's Jimmy Allen Bureau of Gravity.
Yeah,
They
so
own that.
there's an Oddfellows building on
It's in-
LaSalle Street. It was built about 1912, I think, so it postdates Casimir.
Is
Yeah,
that probably
10
the
years
same
ago.
Oddfellows group though?
Oh, yeah, it's the same,
It's
yeah,
always been
yeah.
Wabansi or.
Yeah. The Wabansi Lodge, yeah, it's.
So they're an ongoing entity here, or just the building?
No, they're not in existence.
The building is there.
Yeah, I mean, they were for a while.
I would love to track down that photograph of that group of men
Yeah,
in the 1890s or the 1900s, because they must have been just terrific people to be so benevolent and help out a widow and her daughter. I mean, that was incredible.
that's a nice stone building, and it says Oddfellows.
On it. Oh,
Yeah,
Okay, we'll have to go check that out before we leave today.
and then, so I had a question. So have you, I mean, you're really looking at, the family history and kind of doing a lot of digging. Are you actively trying to find where all the pieces went, or?
I would love to. That's
Okay.
the next step, right? So I would love to find it if we could track down Love's recreation somehow. I think we've got
No.
a decent paper trail on that. So I would love to find some of these pieces.
John, I think Jennifer Putzier did a collection. She went through Aurora and did a list of where this artwork is located, including the artwork that was brought here today by Brian Failing from the fire
Yeah,
department.
I
I think
think-
there's a list somewhere, but
I think it really, but I think it was she did a lot of research, really pretty in depth. But I think it was, most of that was stuff that was still close by, I believe, that it was easy enough to kind of say, this is here and this is there, but I'll have to take a look at that.
why don't you all do that?
No,
We'll come back.
okay.
We'll come back for the art show. That would be fabulous.
No,
That
we'd love
would
to
be-
track down some of these.
That
things
would be
more
an
if you could.
interesting show, wouldn't it? Uh-huh. Boy, now that's, ah,
You think there's much here?
the wheels are turning.
And some more work for Scott.
And I will thank Aunt Nancy too for Casimir's gravestone. It didn't just pop up. She purchased that gravestone in 2020, I believe. So we're excited to go see that as well.
And why does it say back there?
Because there's no birth certificate. The certificate of baptism was filed with the basilica, and it's the baptismal.
Why not maybe?
So I'm not sure that he was actually born on, January 15th, isn't that the day? January 16th. All we've got is confirmation that that was the baptism at the Basilica of Notre Dame in Montreal.
Yeah.
So that's why it says Bap.
Okay, he was a Baptist or
Right,
something.
no, not Baptist, no.
Well, at least it has a definite date.
We are happy for that date. I have no idea what was going through his head. I don't know if he forgot when he was born, or if he just kind of felt like, I've been robbed of all these years, and I'm gonna shave off some years when I go to Cooper Union and be 8 years younger than they think I am. I don't want him to know I'm 31. I want him to think that I'm younger, and he obviously had a good genetic gene makeup
He
because
looked in the mirror and he said, gosh, I've got such a good mustache. I gotta claim myself to be 10 years younger than I actually am.
I can hide behind this.
It's, you come to America, you reinvent yourself.
Reinvent,
That's
exactly.
exactly.
And he's not he didn't corner the market on reinventing himself when he came up. I'm sure working in the genealogical society that you see these discrepancies quite a bit.
Yeah.
They're pretty common.
Are you all related to Lawton Chiles?
No, I wish I was. He was a great senator from the state of Florida. I met him once. I interned on Capitol Hill, and he was an incredible senator. Loved him. You know what? We might be. I'm gonna tell you. I second thought, he's my cousin.
Okay. Were you an intern for a year or?
No, I was an intern for a summer for a congressman from Western North Carolina. The summer of Watergate. It was fun.
Wow,
Had a great time.
that's 70s, yeah.
Yeah, 1970s. Anything else? Thank you all for coming.
We appreciate everyone's contributions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being online, and I think we're gonna go offline now.
Thank you, family.
Thank you.